Have you ever felt that a relationship in your life is eroding your peace, confidence, and sense of self-worth? In today's video, we're going to explore 9 clear signs that it's time to end all contact, even if it's with a close friend or family member. Imagine this: is there someone in your life who constantly makes you feel guilty, judged, or as if you're only valuable when you please them? As Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Creating distance isn't selfish. It's a necessary step to protect your peace and self-respect. This video will not only help you recognize these dangerous red flags, but also provide you with powerful tools to confront them without guilt or hesitation. Make sure to watch until the end, because I'll reveal the most subtle yet common sign, one that many of us overlook, and how you can free yourself from it forever. Before we dive in, if you find value in these insights, please hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any essential content that strengthens your spirit and enriches your relationships. Now, let's embark on the journey to reclaim the freedom and respect you truly deserve. 1. Avoid people who don't spend money. Have you ever met someone whose first words to you were about not having money? It's easy to empathize if they're truly struggling, but oddly enough, these individuals often lead a comfortable life, enjoying personal pleasures, indulging in trips or hobbies. Yet, when it comes to you, they suddenly bring up financial excuses to avoid responsibility or obligations. This isn't about poverty, it's about calculated behavior. If you've been in such a situation, take a moment to reflect. This is not a sign of a balanced or genuine relationship. I once had a friend like this. Every time we planned something, he always had an excuse about not having enough money. But I noticed he had no hesitation spending on personal luxuries or impressing others. One day, when he declined a trip we had planned together, I realized the issue wasn't his financial capacity. It was his lack of value for my presence. That was the moment I understood such relationships can't endure, as they aren't built on fairness or genuine care. In any relationship, whether it's with friends, family, or a partner, mutual sharing and support are essential. If you feel like you're always the one giving while the other person simply takes advantage without reciprocating, the relationship has become unbalanced and potentially burdensome for you. Remember, good relationships are founded on equality, respect, and mutual care. If someone views you only as a resource, don't hesitate to set clear boundaries or even step away from that relationship. Your life deserves to be filled with connections that bring joy, empathy, and true value. 2. Avoid people who often quarrel and take sides. Have you ever felt like you're caught in a relationship where every conversation turns into a battle? This is exactly what happens when you deal with people who never stop arguing. These individuals not only blow minor issues out of proportion, but also drag you into their conflicts, forcing you to pick sides. They don't just exhaust their own lives, but also drain the peace out of your relationship. Let me share a personal experience. I once had a friend like that. He seemed confident on the surface, but whenever there was a difference of opinion, he would immediately escalate it into a heated argument. One time, during a casual gathering with friends, we were discussing plans for a trip, and a minor disagreement arose. He pulled me into the argument, insisting I back him up in front of everyone. That moment changed our friendship forever. I realized that if someone frequently stirs up conflicts and pressures others to take their side, maintaining a balanced and healthy relationship with them becomes impossible. Arguing is not a sign of intelligence or strength. On the contrary, it reflects a lack of emotional control and an inner sense of insecurity. People who argue constantly not only harm their relationships, but also miss opportunities for personal growth. A wise person doesn't need to win every debate. Instead, they prioritize peace, understanding, and resolving issues calmly. If you find yourself stuck in a pattern of frequent arguments or often being drawn into unnecessary conflicts, take a moment to pause and reflect. Cultivating calmness doesn't just protect your relationships, it also safeguards your inner peace. In life, harmonious connections and a tranquil mind are the treasures worth cherishing. 3. Avoid people who take other people's worries lightly. In the journey of life, each of us carries our own unique burdens. No two the same. Worries, joys, and sorrows hold relative value, immeasurable by a common scale. Yet, one of life's greatest disappointments is when we share our struggles, only to encounter people who magnify their own burdens while diminishing or dismissing ours. This isn't just a lack of respect. It's a behavior that erodes trust and drains the foundation of any relationship. I remember a moment when I confided in a longtime friend about the challenges of balancing work while caring for my aging parents. Instead of offering empathy, he glossed over my concerns and immediately shifted the conversation to his work pressures, as if my struggles didn't exist. That experience didn't just leave me disappointed. It deeply hurt. I realized then that relationships can only flourish when both sides respect and truly listen to each other, valuing one another's struggles as they would want their own to be valued. Respect isn't a grand gesture. It's often found in the simplest of actions. It lies in expressing genuine gratitude, saying thank you when someone helps, or apologizing sincerely when you've caused hurt. These words, when spoken from the heart, are not mere courtesies but the bedrock of meaningful relationships. It's vital to distance yourself from those who lack gratitude, those who cannot celebrate your successes or empathize with your pain. A person who finds joy in others' suffering lacks compassion, and this lack of respect isn't toxic. It reveals a chilling indifference. While we can't control how others behave, we can choose the people we allow into our lives. Build relationships founded on respect, gratitude, and heartfelt care. Surround yourself with those who share in your joy, console you in your sorrow, and genuinely wish for your happiness. Never revel in someone else's suffering. Not only does it wound them, but it also diminishes your own humanity. By living with compassion, you won't just nurture beautiful relationships. You'll create a life that's deeply meaningful and worth cherishing. 4. Avoid anyone who enforces their religious or political beliefs. None of us are exactly the same, and that is the true beauty of human relationships. The real meaning of connection lies not in imposing ourselves on others, but in recognizing and appreciating differences, building shared values from them. However, there are people who incessantly try to impose their beliefs on others, whether it's religion or politics. This behavior not only exhausts us, but also creates deep fractures in relationships. I remember an old friend who was once very close to me. Every time we spoke, he would try to convince me that his way of life was the only correct one, that I needed to change my beliefs. Initially, I engaged in debates with him, trying to defend my perspective. But after every conversation, I felt emotionally drained. Over time, I realized that these arguments didn't lead to any understanding. They only pushed us further apart. Pointless arguments often fail to resolve anything. When both sides are determined to defend their egos, the conversation turns into a battle where both lose. Even if you win the argument, the satisfaction is fleeting and often comes at the expense of someone else's pride. The most significant consequence isn't just the loss of respect, but the lingering resentment and the lasting wounds you may have unknowingly inflicted. Wise people never argue just to prove they're right. Instead, they listen, empathize, and know when to step back. True victory in a relationship isn't about dominance. It's about connection. 5. If you feel distressed when you meet a friend, avoid that friend. Have you ever realized that people who once brought you joy and laughter now feel distant? It doesn't necessarily mean you did something wrong or that they've changed for the worse. It simply means time has taken you both on different paths. Life is constantly evolving, and so are we. Our interests, values, and perspectives naturally shift over time. Sometimes, relationships that once felt perfectly in sync begin to feel out of tune. I recall a story from a colleague of mine. He spoke about a childhood friend with whom he had shared countless unforgettable moments, going to the movies, playing sports, and dreaming about their futures together. But life eventually took them in opposite directions. One moved to a new city, building a career and family, while the other stayed in their hometown, leading a simpler life. When they reconnected, it wasn't the same anymore. Their conversations felt forced, filled with polite questions and an underlying sense of unfamiliarity. My colleague tried hard to preserve the friendship, but he realized they had grown too far apart to find the connection they once had. Instead of clinging to the past, he chose to step back. Not because he no longer cared, but because he understood that sometimes letting go is the only way to honor the changes they had both undergone. Relationships are like a dance, requiring both partners to move in harmony. When the rhythm no longer aligns, both sides feel awkward and drained. Rather than blaming yourself or the other person, stepping back and accepting change is often the wisest choice. This doesn't mean erasing someone from your life, but creating space for both of you to grow. Cherish the memories you've shared, but don't be afraid to let the relationship become a treasured part of your past. Sometimes, letting go isn't just about respecting the other person, it's about respecting yourself. 6. Avoid those who continue to complain about themselves. Have you ever felt like an emotional dumpster? A place where someone constantly unloads their sadness and frustrations without regard for your feelings. Everyone needs a shoulder to lean on during tough times, but that sharing could come from empathy, not selfishness. Someone who complains incessantly without caring about your emotional well-being isn't seeking companionship. They're using you as a receptacle for their burdens. This doesn't just exhaust you. It can pull you into a vortex of negative emotions that aren't yours to carry. I once had a friend named Sarah, a former colleague. During a period when my mother was critically ill, I desperately needed support. Instead of checking on me, Sarah came to me daily to unload her grievances. She never paused to ask how I was doing. When I tried to share my worries, she quickly pivoted back to her own issues. One day, after my mother's surgery, Sarah called to complain that I hadn't responded to her messages quickly enough. That was the moment I realized I needed to set boundaries. I told her, "Sarah, I can't keep doing this. I have too much on my plate right now, and I need the people around me to understand and share the load." Her response was silence, followed by distance between us. It was painful, but I knew it was the right decision to protect my well-being. Not all sadness deserves to be shared, and no one is obligated to be someone else's emotional dumping ground. Learn to listen selectively, establish boundaries, and prioritize relationships where both sides genuinely care for each other. 7. Avoid people who take promises lightly or break them easily. Have you ever waited for someone who never showed up, offering only a flimsy excuse? Or worse, no explanation at all? How does it feel to realize you're not a priority in someone's life? A promise is more than just words. It's a commitment, a demonstration of respect and trust. When someone breaks their promises or forgets they ever made one, it doesn't just erode trust. It makes you feel like an afterthought. I remember waiting at a coffee shop for a friend. After an hour, I received a message. "Totally forgot we had plans today. Sorry." It wasn't the first time this had happened, and I realized that continuing to endure this only hurt me. Respecting yourself sometimes means letting go of relationships that no longer bring value. A healthy relationship is built on mutual respect and commitment. If someone cannot provide that, don't hesitate to walk away. 8. Avoid people who keep talking about the same worries. Have you noticed that some people share their worries repeatedly, not seeking solutions but temporary comfort? While empathy is important, when someone dismisses advice and continues to dwell on the same issues, it becomes draining. I once had a colleague who frequently complained about work. At first, I listened and provided suggestions, but she dismissed my advice, returning to the same complaints in every conversation. Eventually, I told her, "I feel that if we keep going in circles, it's not helping either of us. If you genuinely want to improve things, I'm here to help, but that has to start with you." Listening is an act of kindness, but without progress, it can drain the energy of both parties. Be brave enough to offer honest advice, even if it's difficult. True friendships are built on mutual growth, not shallow sympathy. 9. Avoid people who boast excessively. Have you ever met someone who constantly brings the conversation back to their achievements, as if those were the only valuable parts of their identity? Excessive boasting not only signals insecurity but can create a one-sided dynamic in relationships. True humility comes from focusing less on what you've done and more on who you are becoming. Surround yourself with people who value mutual respect and growth over ego-driven conversations. So, as the Stoics taught, the measure of a life is not in what we hold onto but in what we choose to release. Let go of what no longer serves you, embrace the courage within, and step boldly into your potential. Until then, act wisely and act stoic.